And welcome to the Homeschooling Global Summit 2020. Today's guest is Scott Sibley, and he's talking to me from San Diego. He's a director of Journeys Map, which is an ed tech company based out on the west coast of the US. Scott, thanks very much for your time today.
Thanks for having me, Daniel. Happy to be here.
Now, Scott, you and I have spoken before, and we've got to know each other a little bit, and your passion around EdTech and educating and lifelong learning is very evident. Could you tell us a little bit about your lead up into the EdTech space, and then we'll get into what Journeys Map is?
Yeah, of course. So I kind of come from a lineage of educators in one way or another. So whether it's teachers in my family, like my mom, aunts, uncles, cousins, or my dad's side of things, being an entrepreneur in the EdTech space, and even before that, working in the education system. So kind of has been in my blood from the time I was born, I guess, whether I liked it or not. And then before all this, I worked in the accounting industry for a few years, but decided that wasn't necessarily the route for me. Transferred a lot of those skills over to what I do today, and have been able to work in that tech space for going on 12 or so years, 12, 13 years. Both at Journeys Map, which I know is our focus today, which has actually been spun out of a company that I've been with for the past 12 years. Originally, my focus was supporting a reading assessment product that we have as part of our portfolio as well, but it's been a, no pun intended, journey nonetheless.
Yes, pun well taken. And what I know one of your driving passions there is about nurturing the love of lifelong learning. Could you talk a little bit about that message?
Yeah, and it actually probably goes back to some of what I touched on there, where transferring skills from one industry to another, where you kind of maybe from a young age in a traditional sense are kind of ingrained that, graduate from high school or graduate from college and then you're done learning. You're done with the education aspect of life, which really isn't the case. We learn every day in one way or another, whether you know it or not. In various ways, and being able to kind of ingrain that way of thinking in the future generations is something that myself and we at Journeys Map are very passionate about, both for the younger users, so whether you're a K-12 student, but also a lot of our work is focused on those that are in career transitions, which obviously right now, with the state of the global economy, there's going to be a lot of people are going to be finding themselves and trying to reinvent who they are, what they're doing, and part of that is letting them know that you're not starting at square one. You've gained a lot of skills, whether you're a 20-year-old, a 40-year-old, a 60-year-old, or a 10-year-old. There's things that you can do that just kind of leverage off where you've been, and making sure that somebody understands that gives them kind of hopefully the motivation and confidence to know that, okay, I can get out of wherever I am today and get to that next step.
Yeah, exactly. And what I find interesting about your company is, I mean, there's a lot of businesses being developed right now and built in the EdTech space, but you guys have been around for like a lot longer than this, right?
Yeah, so the company started in 1990, so going on 30 years. Primarily over the history of that, focused in the K-12 space here in the States, around a few different focuses with assessment products, reporting, data warehouse management for schools, districts, and that sort of thing. But it was around 2012, 2013 or so that we kind of came together as an enterprise and we're like, okay, we've had success, however you want to deem that, over the years, but we also recognized that that success wasn't being measured how we wanted to measure it ourselves, and kind of started brainstorming what's next for us. It took a few years to go through that process, honestly. But Outspun Journeys Map with a focus on being able to better serve that individual learner throughout their lifelong continuum. So no longer focusing on trying to build a product that's going to satisfy a school or a district first and foremost, but being able to satisfy that sixth grader, that high school student, that military in transition. And we knew that if we could help that individual, the support systems around them, whether it's a school, or an organization in some sense, will then come along and start using the product in various ways. So we're really focused on that individual user.
A normal educational background compared to those that are perhaps in a homeschooling or alternative kind of educational scenario?
Yeah, so thus far, so we launched our beta version of Journeys in September of 2017, so about 2.5 or so years ago. And then, like I mentioned earlier, because we had such a historical footprint kind of in that traditional environment, a lot of the first kind of adopters, if you will, were in that space. And the other thing we did, being here in San Diego, we wanted to be as hands-on as possible with these users. So whether it's being at a school site, or having them in our office or having a virtual session, whatever it may be, we truly want to learn from our users, and not just the teachers or the administrators, but the students. So we had a high focus on those in our local area. And because of kind of that historical footprint, a lot of our users over that period of time have been in that traditional sense. With that said, 2020 here has kind of we've kind of moved out of that beta version, if you will, and into a full scale. Okay, here's our V1. Anybody can go to the website, you can sign up and start using the platform. For individual users, it's actually free. So anybody can come to journeysmap.com, sign up, create an account, start using the system. That goes back to our lifelong learning notion, where we want to create something that, let's say you are in that traditional environment and your school is giving you a product to use. Well, when you graduate, that's usually taken away from you, which we didn't feel like was the right thing, because there's a lot of work you might put into a portfolio or some other thing that's out there. So our motto, our method is, it's lifelong access for that individual. So being able to allow that individual come, sign up, create an account is part of what our kind of our marketing focus is here in 2020. And as we keep going forward, where we then start working on kind of more premium approaches is by engaging with organizations, whether that's a school or other organizations that are trying to then get some other premium type features out of the platform. But we want to make sure that anybody, whether you're in a homeschool environment, just working with your kids, you can come, sign up, use the product for free, and get a lot of benefit out of it, hopefully.
And what are you predicting over there with what's going on right now in COVID? We all find ourselves locked up and finding funny little rooms to conduct interviews from. What are you expecting to find, coming out of this? Is there going to be more individuals coming to you that are making, different choices now?
Hopefully. So that's what we're starting to sense. Right when it happened, we kind of shifted focus slightly and built up a whole, in our support section that's on the website. There's a whole kind of virtual activity section that was built out for kind of a user that's in that new at-home environment that they're not used to. There's, at this point, 6 different activities in there that essentially anybody could go in, start using. So we're trying to support those users, whether it's a parent trying to figure out what to do with their kids, or a teacher trying to figure out what they're going to do with their students. So we're trying to do that as best as possible. We know a lot of the districts that schools or districts we've been working with are still trying to figure out what's going to be best for them. And in that environment, and who knows how many of those students may ultimately switch from that traditional environment off into a homeschool environment or some other virtual type environment, because they find it's a better use case for their life and where they're trying to go with their family and whatnot. So it can go in a lot of different ways. Hopefully, the one caution that we've heard here and there is that hopefully, because it kind of happened so suddenly, the fact that so many places weren't necessarily ready for this sort of shift doesn't push people away for a longer period of time, because they say, oh, this isn't going to work, which that's probably not really the case. It's just, you got to be adequately prepared, and rightfully so. There's many other things going on, so they couldn't everybody be ready for this sort of pandemic. But I think in the long term, it's really going to shift and change the way people are learning, particularly at the higher ed level as well. So not just K-12, but higher ed institutions, especially here in the States, whose tuitions have just gotten out of control. Being able to wrangle that in and let you see, hey, there's a cybersecurity badge program that you could go do for $1,000. That's going to give you your first job in that space while you then work into your next certification. Is a lot better than going to spend $200,000 over 4 years.
Yes, it certainly is. Always makes me wonder about economic majors that go and spend $200,000. Like, surely that's a straight fail.
Yep.
Anyway, what we've spoken about before is what I think is great about your platform is this kind of like careers guidance and giving much broader scope for the individual to try and figure out, what are my skills? What am I here to do? Rather than sit in front of a careers officer or a careers counselor on some rainy Wednesday afternoon and be told, yeah, you're going to be a fish breeder or something.
Yep. No, you hit the nail on the head. And hopefully, the reverse thinking of that is for those people who are the guidance counselor, the career counselor, the teacher. We are truly trying to build this platform out so that it's a support for you as well. There's over 1,800 occupations on Journeys Map just sitting here today. There's no way that Daniel, the career counselor, could know all 1,800 occupations, let alone know some of the data and metrics that are attached to those that you can find inside a platform like Journeys Map. So it's not to say you're doing your job wrong or doing something that you shouldn't be doing. We're trying to build something that's going to help you so that, you know what, when Daniel, the student, comes and sits down and you can say, okay, Daniel, I saw that you went and looked at your interest in becoming a video game designer. Well, you know that before he comes and sits in front of you, as opposed to sitting down and saying, well, you could be a teacher, or you could be a doctor, just kind of running through a list of common things that are just ingrained in our heads. Have that data in front of you when the student comes and talks to you, whether you're a parent or that counselor or whoever, and then being able to allow a platform like Journeys Map to support your work is really something that we want to do, and we're not trying to run anybody out of a job. We want to make everybody do their jobs better.
Absolutely, and I think it's a bit of a misunderstanding from definitely educators, whether they're parents or ministers, politicians, towards the homeschooling or world schooling or unschooling or alternative education community, is that it's a challenge against their system. I don't see it that way at all. I think what I would like to see is more power given back to the teachers, to those people who want to teach, who want to teach in a certain way, but are as much stuck in the system as the kids are.
Yep, totally. No, you hit the nail on the head again. It's a two-way street. We want to be able to support both sides of things and make sure that wherever you're trying to get to, whether you're that student trying to figure out what's next in your grade level or what's next after you graduate, or that the worst side of things. Hopefully everything comes together. It's going to take time with change. We like to think of Journeys Map as a disruptive technology, and it's something that takes a while to kind of get your foothold, and a lot of times you might get pushback. We've heard it, not necessarily that you're doing something wrong, but that the natural sense of somebody in a lot of cases to say, oh, there's no way you could build something like this. When it's like, well, there's probably no way that Google Maps could build what Google Maps is today back at the beginning stages, but they have. And that's how we think of Journeys Map. It's Google Maps for learning. Being able to say, I'm here today, I'm trying to get there tomorrow or 10 years from now, it doesn't matter. And then how do I get there? And then when you need to change your route, we kind of support that route change along the way. Same sort of concept, and being able to hopefully build that in a similar way. It's a big vision, but that's what we're trying to tackle.
It's a huge vision, and one that you've been, greatly rewarded for, because I know the story, but I would like for you to share the story about how you were invited to pitch at the White House.
Yeah, so that happened at the very early stages of the game. So 2016, really we were in that pre-beta phase at that point, building things out enough to have a prototype to be able to do quick demos and get feedback from thought leaders in a lot of different spaces and students themselves. At that time, here in the States, it was during the Obama administration, and Michelle Obama being very passionate about education, learning, students, that side of things. She had decided to start what she called her Reach Higher Challenge. And the short of it was she was trying to identify the next wave of college or career readiness platforms coming into the marketplace, to try to kind of identify what's going to disrupt that side of things and what's going to help support those learners. And so we applied. And long story short, we got selected as one of the top 5 finalists for that competition. At the time, the group out of the White House that ran that competition, because they've run other versions of not just learning competitions, but across the gamut. That competition itself at the time was the one that had the highest applicant rate towards. So we were proud of the fact that it was the most number of applicants they had ever received, and then we were able to get selected. I remember the day the email popped over, because I was the point of contact on it, seeing that, hey, you're a finalist. You get to kind of move on to that next stage, which included about 4 to 6 months of, they called it mentoring. So they assigned us to 6 or 7 thought leaders in the space, not just in education, but in industry, government, policy, to kind of get their thoughts on a weekly, bi-weekly basis about where we're trying to take things. And then the culmination of everything was actually getting to travel to the White House and present Journey's map there in the Indian Treaty Room, which is off of the West Wing. A very exciting and nerve-wracking day to be able to go in. At the time, we didn't know if Michelle was going to be there or not, so that just added to the nerves. You had only 10 minutes. There was 5 of us, so they said, we're going to stop you at 10 minutes, so you gotta have your spiel down, or else it's going to go over. So there's that worry in the back of your head, and just the overall sense of you're walking into a place with so much history behind it, and going to get to present. I was lucky enough to get to present with my sister as well. So we were the co-presenters on the project, which is obviously something that neither of us will ever forget, with our parents in the audience. So a very, very cool experience nonetheless.
Yeah, that's amazing. And so great to see that, EdTech is getting such such great support from like the absolute very top of the tree.
Yeah, it was definitely very cool to see. So in the room there was a bunch of different government and policy thought leaders that were in the space of being able to present to them. And then, or even outside of that, a couple of national counselors of the year here in the United States, and just people that are doing their job to make a difference, whether it's in the traditional environment or untraditional. We're all trying to play the same game and support the same people.
And there are so many layers to it, right? It's hard to compete, I would say, because you guys have carved out your own little niche, and there's so many layers to learning and education, that there's so much room for companies to grow and create and be inventive. So yeah, I think watch this space for sure. There's going to be a lot of
the amount of the doors that have been opened as we keep sharing journeys with more and more people are truly endless. Never, 5-6 years ago, when it was just an idea on a piece of paper, could we imagine one presenting something at the White House, or going through. And while we're focused on that kind of younger learner space, and with a lot of the work we're doing, a lot of the work behind the scenes that we've been working on has actually been industry specific. So we have a lot of work we're doing in the cybersecurity space as a field where in the States, there's about 500,000 open positions in the cybersecurity industry today, high skilled, high paid. The problem is it's a job that 10 years ago, nobody knew about. Being able to expose a profession like cybersecurity down to a 6th grader is something that we've been working on with the help of both leaders in that space, as well as policymakers in that space, to be able to say, okay, there's these pathways. So whether it's a cybersecurity, whether it's advanced manufacturing, artificial intelligence, drones, these are things that a Scott or a Daniel, when we were in school, they were never imaginable. But now, as our kids grow up, they need to be aware that, hey, a job in cybersecurity is something that's out there, and not just something that's going to have you sitting in your mom's basement for the next 30 years. It's something that you could be extremely good at and become extremely well paid and successful at, if that's something. So there's many examples like that we could have never thought of when we started.
Yeah, for sure. And that's one of the hidden values as well that I've just picked up on. I've not thought about it like this before, but if you are an individual on Journey's map and you guys are connected to all of the new fields that are coming out, and all of the cool new tech, and all of the jobs that are going to be created in 5 to 10 years, 15 years time, then being part of Journeys Map, you're going to get to see that first before anyone else.
Yep, totally. So that we've kind of used, we have a group here in San Diego called the San Diego Cyber Center of Excellence. And 2.5 years ago, when they saw our vision, they got it. And they said, this is part of the pain point we've been trying to solve. How do we, one, make people aware of those professions, and then make sure that, if we're talking San Diego specifically, because that's where their work has been, how do we make sure that the schools in the area are teaching the right skills? And how do we make sure those skills are properly being mapped to the industry, cybersecurity industry in our area? So San Diego is one of the largest hubs for cybersecurity professionals in the United States, which I never knew before jumping into this side of things. But it's a hotbed, and we want to make sure that the skills that the industry is looking for are getting taught by the higher ed institutions or certification providers, and that, to your point, those pathways are then the awareness around them is being brought down to those younger students. So they say, oh, I know I want to go into that profession, and go off from there. So it's a whole use case on gap analysis and awareness.
So from a self-directed learning point of view, if an individual is on Journeys Map and hasn't ever thought about like a specific profession that you've put up, or you might have just added, that might just unlock them completely to like their future, and then now they can plan exactly what it is that the steps they need to take to reach that goal.
Yep, that you got the basic concept. So we kind of think of the map that we've built as really a canvas, and it goes both ways. So there's going to be APIs or databases that point into it, that start presenting, for example, these new occupations that are out there that the user can go off and explore, and being able to make that awareness factor. The flip side of things is we also see a use case in the longer term around third parties being able to innovate on top of it. So as we go forward, no different than, say, Uber leveraging a Google Maps to let you know where you're standing so they know where to pick you up. We view the map, Journeys Map, as something that other third parties are going to want to innovate on top of, and maybe only pull off subsections. So maybe there's a whole version of Journeys Map that's just focused on cybersecurity, or just focused on 8th grade algebra, and it's part of our entire platform, but somebody else is saying, you know what, I really want to just hyper focus on this one thing and leverage the platform that's being built here to kind of spur off into a whole new platform that's out there to bring some other functionality around it. So it's an exciting thing to kind of think about it both ways, where it's an individual coming directly to us, but can also ultimately be individuals going to places that we're just connected to, and we're supporting. And we're supporting those other organizations, no different than supporting that student in our longer term thinking.
Yeah, it's perfect. So you're sitting right in between the middle. You've got the great new companies, or like industry on one side, and those young people, or like you said, it doesn't have to be young people. It can be of any age that are looking to utilize their skill set and come to Journeys Map and find that.
Yep, exactly.
Now, Scott, I know you've got to go. Is that correct?
So I've got about 10 or so minutes left. So
would you be able to do a quick screen share and just show us, if I'm like, for example, a 14-year-old kid that is interested in AI or cyber security, privacy around the internet, which is probably something very prevalent in their futures. Yep. Would you be able to just jump on and, walk me through what it might look like to find a job like that?
Of course. So I'm going to go ahead and grab the screen control.
Yep.
Okay. Should be coming up on your end now.
Yeah, I see it.
Perfect. So for anybody trying to find us, journeysmap.com, feel free to come over here. Like I mentioned, individuals, you're free to come here and sign up. So feel free to follow that link there. But for our purposes, I'm going to go ahead and fast forward us into the application. So as I get in here, I'll kind of give you a quick flyby of what is a very common use case, which really centers around career exploration. So as you log in, after you've done a few things, you'd ultimately land on your personal dashboard right up top here. So going back to the thinking that a lot of this should be driven off of the individual's interest levels or their skills. So maybe you're that person, you have no idea what you want to go off and explore. Well, to help support that, we've built in both an interest survey, which is over here on the left, as well as a skills assessment in the center here. You can take one or both of those things maybe as a starting point. So I can give you a sense of how the interest survey is set up. So it's leveraging what's known as the Holland-Rysick score, for those of you out there who may be familiar with that. But essentially, it's a series of 60 like-dislike questions. So something that a second grader all the way through a 60-year-old can come in here and have confidence in being able to complete. I won't make us answer all 60 questions, but for our purposes, I'm just going to pop us back over to the dashboard. And essentially what would happen is, let's say I completed all those out. I'm going to get ultimately to my results. And now I'm being able to say, okay, I am on this Rysick scale, conventional, realistic, and investigative based on this session that I took. It's actually a 6-point scale, so you can pop in and see all 6, but we leverage what's known as the super strong version. Now, based on that, you start to learn a little bit more about yourself. So maybe you had no idea what your interest traits were, so that's great, you learned that. But then secondarily to that, we start connecting you with the different occupations out there that you may be interested in based on those results. So we start with a broadest stroke, which is around the career clusters. So we present 6 at a time, so I can go through here, page over to the next ones, essentially being able to come in here and say, you know what, maybe something, I'm high tech, maybe something around IT is catching my attention. Well, we take you from a cluster view, which is the broadest, into that next layer down, which is the pathways. So I'm coming in and saying, well, maybe something in network systems. That seems cool. And now below that, we're now being connected with the actual occupation. So what we've done is aligned your results with these specific occupations that are out there that you could come in, go off and start exploring. There is videos attached to each of these. So you can kind of get a day in the life type glimpse of what's going on.
As persistently as.
Sorry about that. As well as being able to ultimately say, you know what, I want to go learn more about becoming a security analyst. This now pops open a whole dashboard about this security analyst position, some at-a-glance information, but essentially coming in here and starting to see things around personality. Over there on that wage widget, once it loads, it would be the localized wages for you, but I'll fast forward. Here are the different degree pathways you may be interested in, the certifications that you may want to go off and explore. It's all localized, so it knows I'm sitting here in San Diego. So the schools in the area that you may want to go off and take a look at. Each of these comes with their own dashboard, so I could actually pop in, go ahead and say, okay, here's the University of San Diego, start learning more about that university. So trying to make it that one-stop shop to be able to go off and take a look at things. As I go back over to that occupation. So this dashboard approach is being able to say, okay, you've selected something, come in here, start learning more about it, and being able to get information around what are real-time jobs in your area that you can go off and take a look at. What are the tasks? What are the technology? What skills would I be looking to gain as I'm part of this profession? So getting down in some real nitty-gritty details, as well as being able to say, you know what, maybe this didn't catch your attention. Here are some explore them, learn a little bit more about them, and then let's pretend like this is something I want to keep track of. I can come in here and say, well, I want to create a journey. Pop back up. This is actually going to take us to our map. We're kind of like with Google Maps. I have an ending destination. Let's say I'm in 8th grade today, just give a starting point. Well, now, based on those 2 parameters, we'll start being able to present the user with what these journeys actually look like here in just a second. So it'll give the user a visual of how the routes to get from point A to B can look. So just quickly, maybe we'll pick on the first one here. You're taking a more traditional path. You're going to finish out your K-12 schooling, go off and get a bachelor's in computer science. I'm going to go ahead and save this. This is now part of my portfolio. my profile. So it's kind of attached to me, if you will. And now as I'm going through here, the next thing that we can start doing is being able to say, well, this is a high level view of what a journey looks like. We could actually dive down into the details of, let's say, 8th grade. Well, in 8th grade, based on the taxonomy that's being used at your school or your homeschooling situation, here are the subject areas. Here's within mathematics, you're being focused. I was having trouble with geometry. Well, within geometry, I'm going to start learning the Pythagorean theorem. Well, understanding the Pythagorean theorem, I need to master these 3 sub-concepts. So the concept here, to kind of sum it up, is find somewhere you're trying to get to, create a journey, and then along the way, be able to then help support that user with these very granular details as well along that pathway. So that's kind of how these journeys can be very broad as well as very specific. That hopefully gives a quick overview of kind of some of how Journeys Map functions within the platform.
Yeah, that's perfect. I think that's going to go a real long way to helping people understand exactly what it is you're doing. I think it looks amazing. I think it looks cool. I'm going to go play with it myself and find out what I should have been in life rather than wasting 18 years in foreign exchange markets. And
no,
this is
the thing we hear the most is, I wish I had that when.
Yeah, right. And I'm definitely going to get my kids to play around with it because, it just helps you set your mind up. It's like, right, okay. And, if you get 2 or 3 steps down that line and you don't like it and you're not into it anymore, go find something else.
Yep, you can save as many journeys as you want. You can go off, keep exploring, take the interest survey again, go look at something else. Like I mentioned, if I pull back here, over in this career territory, there's 1,800 occupations to go off and look at. So it's going to take you a while to get through all of them. So plenty of things to go off and explore.
Right. Yeah, that's awesome. So yeah, thank you, Scott. That's brilliant. I really, really appreciate that. I think that's going to go a long way to helping people come and find you. And so Journeys Map is journeysmap.com. It's that simple.
Yeah, it is. And anybody who wants to reach out directly to me, feel free to shoot me an email or reach out to us on social media. But my email is just Sibley, Sibley, @journeysmap.com.
Perfect. And do you want to end the screen share as we say goodbye?
We can
put a face back to your voice.
Let me. And well, of course, it would have let me. There we go. Sorry about that. I should have stopped it.
No, not yet. Maybe can I request?
Seal it back.
Exit, hide.
There we go.
There you go. We found you.
Sorry about that.
Oh, no problem at all. Thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time and for helping us understand exactly what you're doing. I think it's great. I hope some people come and find you and check it out. And it's important work, man. Thank you so much.
No, pleasure's all mine. Appreciate helping you get the word out. Every eyeball helps, and more than that, every piece of feedback helps as well as we keep moving through our roadmap priorities.
Excellent. Thank you, Scott.
Thanks.